Hello and welcome to another episode of Tester Speak. And I'm your host, Brijesh Deb. And as you can see on the screen, today I have Lavanya Mohan with me. I have been overly impressed by Lavanya listening to all her talks that she does in the meetups and conferences and workshops. And last year I had the fortune of being co-speaker of Lavanya in two of the conferences. So it was a wonderful experience for me, and I finally got to share, thoughts with her and exchange ideas. And what I thought then is something that is coming true today is, exchange the ideas in reality with a larger audience. So thank you, Lavanya, for being such an inspiration, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. Rajesh, and I want to say that I'm really your fan. I mean, you've been so active on LinkedIn and the Telegram channel. You're doing so much for the community. So these kind of Tester Speak and WIT. And if I'm not wrong, I think so. Based on your post, I think this is probably like the third or fourth or maybe fifth talk that you're having in this week. And it's just probably seven for you. So I have no clue how you do it, but I'm your fan. It's amazing.
Well, thank you so much. That is very kind of you. Yeah, so it's more like a mutual admiration society at the moment. I'm your fan and you are my fan. Well, no, nothing like that. I mean, I am for the community. Yes, I mean the community itself is my inspiration. I mean, there are testers such as you who inspire me a lot, and I feel myself as fortunate to be able to do something. So thank you for being the inspiration. In fact, the entire community is a huge inspiration for me. Uh, so that said, okay, Lavanya, we would like to know more about you. So how did you get started with testing? Is the first question that I have for you.
Okay. So I did engineering in IT, and in the final year we had placements. So usually these bulk recruiter companies would come to college first, right? And I got placed in TCS. They didn't really say what role or anything. The only information that we had is you're placed, and then we'll do some training and we'll figure out what role you get, right? So that happened, and what that also meant is I couldn't apply for any other company because we had that policy that if you placed in one, then you don't really get to sit in campus placements for other companies. But in the final semester, ThoughtWorks they had come to Mumbai, and it was like a pool campus. It was not really in college, right? So our college placement officer they just told us that you know what, this is this company. They're coming to Mumbai on this date. Why don't you go try? And this was actually like I think one day before our final semester vivas, right? So I was in two minds because I mean during engineering you don't really study way in advance. You probably doing a lot just before exams. So I was a little confused. Should I go? Should I not? But then my dad said it's going to be a good experience. Just go anyway. And then I went. There were a lot of people actually. So we couldn't finish all the rounds. We did like initial few rounds and then maybe some coding assignment and things like that. But all rounds were not completed that day. So they asked us to come to ThoughtWorks Pune office like a few weeks later. And then when I went there, one of the first interviews was like there were two people. One was a developer and the other one was a tester. And they took my interview together. And then after that round, like the HR came and told me that they feel I might be a better tester. So if I'm okay with that, then they will conduct further rounds, which would be very specific to testing. And honestly, at that point, I didn't really know a lot of difference. And I thought, yeah, okay, why not? So I said, yeah, okay, sure. Let's do the other rounds as well. And then like all the other rounds were very focused on testing and just talking about scenarios and things like that, very practical examples. And then I got selected. Now the other thing happened is so I was hired as a tester. I joined as a tester, and in my first project, I spent quite a lot of time. Like yeah, it was. I think I was on that project for 3 years, and I was lucky because that was actually a greenfield project. So I kind of was there from the beginning, and saw it till a very good state. And since I was there for so long, right, I sort of knew the domain very well. I knew clients very well. I understood how users really use that system. So So I kind of got an overall like idea of all that. And eventually I became so comfortable that if I would find some bugs, I could actually look at code and figure out where exactly the problem was.
Mhm.
So slowly I started, saying, this is where the problem is. Then I would start writing failing tests so that some developer would fix it. Then eventually I started fixing small issues. And it just naturally transitioned such that I started writing like coding for proper features as well. And then, like, I don't know, it was just a very natural transition. But then when this happened, they even officially changed my title to an application developer. So I kind of moved from a tester role to a developer role, and officially as well, right? And then, like, after that, I did that for a few years, and I was learning a lot. But after maybe around 2.5 years or so, I started feeling like, hey, I'm missing something. I don't know what. Like, I just didn't feel happy enough, So I started thinking more, why is it? Why am I feeling like this? And what I realized is, as a tester, I would just explore the application and learn about it and think a lot from user perspective and just, try to do things which a lot of others didn't think of. But that was something I was not really doing as a developer. I was very focused on the task at hand. And I felt like, I mean, maybe some good developers, look at things from the broader perspective and try to do all this, but somehow I couldn't really do it while I was doing development. And that's when I realized, you know what, I actually like that thing more. I actually want to go back to testing. So then there was a dilemma sort of state, right? I spoke to a few people and I said, you know what, I think I like that more. I want to go back to doing testing. And there were a few folks who said, what? Are you crazy? No, it was seriously like that. Are you crazy? Why? Uh, they told me statements like, you're going to earn more as a developer. Why do you want to change? You're doing better like this. I mean, you're doing fine as a developer. So are you scared of this? Why? And there was that internal fear in me, like, what will people say if I move back to testing? And right? I mean, I've grown up in an Indian society where people always talk about, wo char log kya kahenge? It's like, what will those other people say? So it was a very big dilemma for me whether I should change back or not. And I knew that I would probably be happier as a tester. So I once just spoke to my mother. I told her like, this is what it is, and I actually want to go back, but I fear that I may not be able to do as well monetarily, maybe, or that's what people are saying. And she said, it's okay, just don't bother, just do what what will make you more happy. So that was like the point where I got more confident and said, okay, I have some support. Like, even if it's a bad decision according to the world, I know that it's okay.
Yeah.
So then I said I want to move back. And like when I joined another company, I joined as a tester. And that's how my testing journey restarted. So now, yeah, I'm a tester.
Which is so cool. I mean, for somebody to take a conscious decision and to fight all those things being thrown at you. Now, you've uh, touched upon a very interesting subject. Okay, वो चार लोग क्या कहेंगे or what will those other people say? For the audience who don't understand Hindi, um, this is a very big problem. Okay, and it's a problem with everything that we do. Okay, and it's not just India; it's worldwide. Okay, we start thinking about what will others think about me. So, as a tester, what are the things that have been thrown at you? What are the um, sort of not so pleasant uh, things that have been thrown at you, which you had to sort of, you know, ignore and move ahead? So,
Uh,
yeah.
One of the things that like first thing that comes to mind is people saying, testing is easy or boring, or the variations of those. And I think it's primarily because people don't understand what testing is, right? Like a lot of them just think of testing as checking. This is some requirement, and you're just asserting if it's the same or not. But testing is actually way beyond that, and I think a lot of people don't get that, and that's why they have this notion. So I feel like that's one of the things that has been thrown at me a lot, and in fact, even today. So I have, like, after I moved back to testing, it's been a few years, but still some people tell me, "Hey, why are you still doing this? Why don't you do something else?" Um, I think it's mainly because of this kind of bias. And I've heard people saying things like, oh, just automate everything. You're taking too long to test. Why aren't you automating stuff? And it's sometimes it's very difficult to convey, like testing is not just, this checking, and everything cannot be automated. Like half of the testing really goes on in my head. I'm thinking about things. And I'm not going to be able to automate that. I mean, if I could, maybe that thinking process like can write code as well. Like, what are you really asking me to do, right? So I think there are multiple of those things that have been put on me. Yeah, even the other thing that I already told, right? Like somebody said, you're going to earn more as a developer. Don't move back to testing. So those things we hear even now, and I feel all those are maybe we are also equally responsible. Like we as testers are also responsible for this, because we don't really do a great job at conveying to others what testing actually is. Like we if somebody asks us what we're doing, we say, oh yeah, I'm testing this feature. We don't really talk about all the thoughts that go in behind it, right? All the other things that we thought of checking or exploring. We don't talk about it in a scientific sort of way, right? Because testing, in some sense, is a little scientific. We have to experiment, we have to explore, we have to think about different cases. We don't talk about that in a scientific way. We just say, oh, I'm checking whether this is meeting that requirement. So I guess, like including me, we're all to be blamed for this kind of notion as well. But yeah, I think things like these I've been hearing them a lot through my career, I guess.
Well, so you've touched upon a couple of very interesting things here during your response, and folks, first of all, apologies if you see a poor video on my side. My internet connection has been very shaky, so apologies for that. Um, Now that said, uh, I want to tell you all, the audience, that Lavanya is an amazing automation tester. Okay, if you look at her talks and stuff that she's presented at conferences, you will know how good she is with her skill when it comes to test automation. For her to be talking in terms of testing is something which I'm really enjoying, because the passion with which she's talking about testing is amazing. And Lavanya, coming back to you, you mentioned that this problem of okay, automate everything for me. Okay, this direction, this generally comes in a lot of organizations. I have faced that. Okay, a lot of testers face it when people do not understand the actual meaning of automation, and then they will make statements like, oh, automate x percentage, or automate 100%, you know for me. How do you handle that? I mean, what do you tell those people?
I have been in those kind of situations actually. So I think one thing important to convey is what can automation do and what it cannot do. So one very important thing for all of us to understand is whatever checks that we do automate, they are only things that we already know.
Correct.
And what we're trying to see that after some code changes, just the way they were working before, they're continuing to work now. Right? But it doesn't find anything apart from that, like apart from anything that you already know. It doesn't find something different. So testing is, of course, it does involve checking these kind of checks, but that's not it. And usually, when people talk about like automate so much percentage, what they really do mean is, oh, there are these 100 cases, now just automate them, right? And also the problem is a lot of people who say that think about automation from like driven through UI. So
Mhm.
they just say, oh yeah, automate all this with whatever Appium or Selenium, whatever, like at the UI level, and that's not going to help. Like sometimes we just need to take a step back and see whether it even makes sense to automate that particular case.
Yeah.
If yes, should it be at a lower level? Should it be a unit test? Should it be an integration test? Why do we want to cover it at the UI level, right? And also I feel like UI level tests should be, well, one, very less in number, and should also probably cover journeys. I've seen people who test like multiple different combinations from the UI. Sometimes it feels very unnecessary, right? And the thing is, we also a lot of times do not like collaborate with our developers or other people in the team to understand what has already been automated. So maybe all these things have already been automated at the UI level. So why are we doing it again? Sorry, at the unit test level. So why are we doing it again at UI? We need to ask those questions before we accept that, yeah, okay, it's percentage, because that percentage doesn't really mean anything. And actually, I want to, like, since we're talking about percentage, right, I also want to talk about percentage at this unit level. So I worked on a project where there was a sudden need, like sudden ask that, we need this X percentage coverage. And what some of the people did was, the only thing that they automated actually was getters and setters, which are probably like not that valuable, right? Like the core logic is not tested at all. All these getters and setters have a test, and that increases your percentage. Great. Now you can tell somebody, oh yeah, we have great automation coverage, but is it giving value? Maybe not. I mean, because how much value is your getter and setter related test going to give, right? So I feel like numbers can be easily manipulated as well, and that's not really the thing that we need to rely on. We need to have discussions about whether it's valuable, whether this is the right place to even automate it in the first place. And those are the discussions we're missing, right? We are treating maybe like testers as a separate unit who will just do UI level tests, automation. But that's not how a project should ideally work. There should be more collaboration so that you don't duplicate things and you don't you automate it at the level where it makes most sense. So I guess I would respond like that. I would try to ask more questions in the first place. I would maybe ask, what is this number? Like, why did you even come up with this number? Things like that, and tell them all these different ideas so that maybe we can come to a better, we can have better discussions about it.
Thank you for, first of all, uh, reassuring, okay, and confirming my thoughts on this subject in such a wonderful way, because I always tell people that instead of looking at automation coverage, start thinking about automation value. Okay, coverage, yeah, it sounds nice. Okay, it looks good to see. Okay, 90% or 95% or something. 100% is not possible, so let's not talk about it. But 90%, 95%, it looks really nice. Okay, but what does it really mean? What value does it bring in? That 95% automation coverage may not bring even the tiniest increment in the value that you're bringing to the entire project. And you very rightly said that if you are uh, trying to confirm certain things, if you want to run confirmatory checks, automation may be of help. But if you are really trying to look for something unknown in the application, look for how it responds to different requests that come in from different users, or different ways in which a product can be operated or used by different users, your automation is not going to be of much value there. And your thing about, first of all, you said multiple things, and I think all of them need, uh, if somebody is writing a book on automation, you need to write separate chapters on each of the things that you've spoken about, because they are so critical. Okay, number one is, uh, testing in the right layer. Okay, everybody starting, oh, UI, oh, let's tackle that, doesn't help. So excellent point on that. Then you mentioned, okay, uh, collaboration, big problem. People do not talk. Okay, there is not enough collaboration. You already put, like you said, testing as a separate unit, and that unit is supposed to do magic. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, when they say things like that, my usual response is, okay, so thank you for giving me that respect, and you think of me as God. Okay, but sorry, unfortunately, 100% is not possible. Okay, so it's a straightforward response. Now, I want to ask you this. Okay, a lot of people say, okay, I've got X number of test cases, and I will target converting those test cases into automation.
Mm.
Okay, so if those test cases already give me 100% test coverage, so if I automate those tests
Mhm.
already exist, I should get 100% automation coverage also. That's the logic that a lot of people try to project. Is that what automation is all about, Lavanya?
Oh, definitely not. I mean, I think, yeah, you're right. A lot of people just think about tests when it comes to automation. But automation is a lot beyond that. I mean, it's just any tool that we build to help us become better testers or help us do our work better. So if we are thinking of automation in terms of only some checks that we want to run, I think that's a very shallow understanding of what automation is, and even a shallower understanding of what testing is. Right? I think we could use automation for so many different things. Test data generation is probably one of the first things that come to mind, because let's say you're testing some file upload functionality. So you want to test with a large file, with a file with multiple different characters, whatever. And how do you generate those files? Well, you can
Different
use
file
some
formats, different file formats, because each file format has its own properties. Yeah.
yeah. So how do you generate data like that? I mean, you could write small scripts, very tiny 10-line scripts, which could just do all this for you magically, yeah, if that's the word, in 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 a less amount of time. But then it's this is also some kind of automation, which is helping you, uh, do your task faster, or just assisting you. So that's one thing. I can actually give an example of something that I did. So we had a, an app. We were building an app which was supported in multiple different regions. And the way we would compute region at that point was not through GPS, was through public IP address. So if we wanted to check in like a different region, what we used to do is have a different, let's say, SSID, and use that public address mapping in our staging environments. We would just call it, yeah, this is from Malaysia, this is from Singapore, this is from somewhere else, and then do that. But what that meant is we had to like switch between our Wi-Fi SSIDs multiple times while our testing, right? And yeah, I mean, if you think about it, even for automated tests, if we wanted to test for a few things which were specific to some other country, it would mean switch to another Wi-Fi, right? So what we did was we just wrote a small functionality. Small, it's you can think of it as an APK which calls Android's Wi-Fi setting manager, and and what we did was we could just then like use one line command, say, oh, connect to this Wi-Fi, or connect to this Wi-Fi with this password, or just turn off the Wi-Fi, right, on any of the devices. And that meant, I mean, so when we wanted to test, it was just easier because we would run one command and it would do everything for us, right? And we could use this for our automated checks as well. And this is one way of like saying automation. It's not really checking anything, but it is some kind of automation that made our lives, easier. So I would think this is also like anything like this is automation. I would classify it as automation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it is not just conversion of test cases. So whoever is watching, please understand this, that if you are still talking about automation in terms of, you know, converting your so-called manual test cases to automation scripts, if you're still talking only about a regression test, if you're still talking only about those smoke tests, it is not automation. Okay, or it is automation, but it is a very shallow, very limited view of automation that you have. Now, I want to draw your attention to something else, Lavanya.
Mhm.
We are all in an automation tools race.
Uh,
There are first there were commercially available tools, and one started pushing the other tool, uh, saying I have this feature, I have that feature, I have support for this, I have support for that. Okay, so it was a mad rush, and then the licensing cost obviously with every feature started increasing. It became so much that at some point somebody had to do something about it. And yesterday, I think it was yesterday, that we were talking about Selenium and UFT. We were talking about QTP on the test chat, and I wrote a brief history about it in the group, saying in 2004, when Selenium actually started, the main reason for somebody to think of an open source thing was the inexorbitant price of QTP licenses. QTP, obviously, those who know, is an amazing tool. Okay, you can do a lot. It has got a lot of features. You can test, web applications. You can test desktop applications. But the price of a license is too much. Is way too much. And now with QTP or UFT changing hands so many times, first from Mercury to HP, now from HP to Micro Focus. Uh,
Mhm.
Things haven't changed except the price. Okay, let me put it that way. But then somebody had the wisdom in 2004 to come up with an open source tool called Selenium. Okay, and it Selenium since 2004 has remained the most popular open source tool, and there have been other tools which have been on top of Selenium. Okay, and for mobile testing we have Appium, and on top of Appium people are building tools, which is awesome. So are you as an automation tester caught up in the tools race?
Not really, no. I mean, I understand why people feel that way because, I mean, if you look at a lot of job openings, I guess they're all talking about tools. They're not talking about code testing at all. They say, oh, we want to hire somebody who knows Selenium, or we want to hire somebody who knows Appium, who has 5 years experience in Appium, and things like that, right? So I understand where this rush is coming from. But I am at least really not so much into, tools. I feel like we need to learn basics first and then understand what the tool does and then use the right tool for that. Basics are important, I guess, like from that's the core. And once you understand that, then sure, you can find the right tools to solve certain problems. But if we target tools, then what I feel is like we then try to use that tool and fit it in everywhere, even if that might not be the ideal one. Right? Like I've seen people who do API testing using Selenium. Why would you do that? Was my question. But that's all we know. So, and Selenium is what everyone wants. So we are going to do it that way. And yeah, I feel like it's a mad rush. It shouldn't really be that way. But yeah, I guess part of the reason for this is also people like me, right, who talk about conference, like talk in conferences, and maybe we show a demo with Selenium. So then, then people feel like, oh, this is the thing that we need to really learn right now, right? So I'm sure part of the blame is something that even I should take. But again, I would want to really reiterate that basics are important. Tools, well, they assist us. But if we are not clear with our basics itself, then we're going to use the wrong tool for the wrong reason. And that's really not going to probably be a nightmare than any kind of assistance.
Well, now you and I were talking before the recording started, and one dilemma that you have currently is what should be your next, conference or next talk about, and
Yeah.
what you would like to see. I mean, you choose the platform, whether it is with the test chat or with test drive or with anybody else. One of the things that I would like to see you talk about is how do you choose the right tool for the right job? I mean,
Mm.
everybody has that thing, okay? Like you said, I mean, use Selenium for API testing. Do you know what Selenium is? Is the first question. Okay. So like this, people have a lot of confusion. Plus, it also brings me to a couple more questions. Is number one, when you talk about tools, when you look at more the modern day job descriptions, it has got a list of 100 tools, and most of them are not even mentioned as good to have. They are all listed as must have.
Yeah.
So as a tester, what should be your approach towards these tools? Okay, number one. Number two, how do you convince the management
Mm.
about the usage of these tools?
Mm.
These are the two questions I would like to know from you first. What is your perspective?
Uh, so, okay, I'll actually try to answer it in different ways. So, one is even from the job openings perspective, and the other, like just in our projects itself. Uh, from job openings perspective, right? Like I try to do my part when our companies try to like list down these are what we need. I try to tell them don't focus on tools, focus on core areas. And I've actually gotten some of them to update these job descriptions so that they don't talk much about tools but talk about the concepts. So we don't want to hire somebody who knows great Appium. Sure, I mean that's something you can learn easily, but the QA mindset is probably more important. So I try to like get people to change the job description in that way so that it also looks more inviting to people who might not have those skills but have a great learnability. I feel like with those kind of job descriptions that we have around tools, a lot of people who are excellent at just testing in general might not apply because they say, oh, like 50% of those things I don't really know. So we're probably missing out on a very good talent just because of writing those things. So that's one, like from the job description perspective. In the projects itself, what I really like emphasize on is before we think about tools at all, we need to think about what problem we're trying to solve, and uh, and it has to be a collaborative thing, like not just two testers talk about it and then decide, yeah, we're going to do this. Right? It's a team collaboration, right? Including developers, maybe including your project managers, including anybody else who's interested in this. And we discuss what are the pain points, what can automation maybe solve for us, um, what kind of things will be important to actually automate, and then we think about like where, how, all of that, right? So but we don't jump with tools, and I think even tools, and also I think a lot of people jump like just say, oh, I've done Java before, so I'm going to write this automation with Java and Selenium. And maybe your developers who are building the application have no clue about Java. Maybe they're writing, I don't know, Ruby or Scala, whatever, right? And I would want to ask those people, have you discussed this with your developers as well? And are they comfortable with it? Because in the end, you don't want to be the only person maintaining your automation suite. It needs to be the entire team owning it up. Otherwise, what will happen? Yeah, your tests fail, and you're the only person who looks at it. And then you don't know whether it's really a failure, it's an app issue, or it's just a test issue. And like if the developers are checking in code and the tests are failing and they don't bother about it, then there is a serious problem. You're not really making things faster. You're probably slowing things down, in fact, right? So it needs to be like an entire team collaborative approach. So when we discuss tools or when we discuss what language to use, I feel like it's not just one person or a two people decision or just a tester decision. It needs to be a complete team decision. So I would approach it like that. I would not start with tools at all. I would start with what problems we're trying to solve and then slowly move to tools.
Well, that for me is the definition of everyone. Uh, quality is everybody's responsibility. We say that, and that is how you define it. Thank you, Lavanya, for doing this. I mean, this is very important. People talk about quality is everybody's responsibility, but if you ask them how do you make sure quality is everybody's responsibility? Nobody has a clue. Okay, and your response is exactly how quality is everybody's responsibility. If you write automation code and if the testers themselves alone are responsible for maintaining it, quality is not everybody's responsibility, right? If you are talking about building a test automation framework, and if the tester does not talk to a fellow developer or the product owner or the architect, quality is not everybody's responsibility. You are moving out away from it. I want to ask, you know, how many times when the job descriptions are made, testing job descriptions are made, do you actually go and discuss those job descriptions with your fellow developers? How many times when the developer job descriptions are made, it is discussed with the fellow testers? Will you be okay with working with somebody with this kind of knowledge? it should always come as a group decision, not as, okay, I am a development project manager, I will decide what kind of developer I want to have. Will that developer be able to work with the current set of testers that you have, the
Very good point.
knowledge that you have? Are you adding value to that? Nobody asks those questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Now another issue, okay, not just this. A project is running. Okay, they have a very robust CI/CD pipeline, and everything is automated. And build comes in, it gets, you know, it checks in, and then you run your magic using Jenkins. Okay, I like to use the word magic because it's automatic for me. Okay, using Jenkins, and at the end of it, in the morning, after all the nightly run is happening, you see an all green Jenkins report, and let's push it to production.
Mm.
Customer uses, second day there is a bug in production.
Mm.
Where do you fix the problem?
Mm.
Do you fix the problem by asking whose fault is it? Or do you fix, what do you fix? Because you have got the world's most amazing CI/CD pipeline running for you. How do you handle this situation, Lavanya?
I think anyone who says why, especially right, like about who missed it or something like that, why didn't the tester test it? Those are just horrible statements to make because they hide the underlying problem.
Yeah.
Now, when something goes to production, yeah, sure. I mean, those things happen, right? Like that, it's possible. But that's not just a person or a role's miss. It's a problem at every different level. Like maybe we didn't have proper conversations to understand what the user really needs. Maybe we didn't have any interactions with the user itself to understand how they would use the system. Yeah, maybe there was something wrong in like the unit test itself,
Yeah.
which we didn't think of. And of course, I mean, it could be at any different level, right? And it could also be at like the observability kind of level, like towards the right, where you don't have great monitoring in place. So you didn't realize that, like after it was released to production, you didn't realize it. Some customer had to call and tell you that, hey, you know what, this is not working. This is like what I was expecting. Right? So it actually signifies issues at like maybe everywhere in our pipeline, and and we need to address it like that. We need to always ask, okay, fine, it was missed, but what can we do better so that such things don't happen again? And it's an objective problem to solve. It's not somebody X person did something wrong. It's something that we need to solve collectively, right? I know somebody who said, "Oh, you know what? You should have actually looked at the commits, and you would have realized that this area was also changed." What? I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. I should have looked at commits, fine. But maybe you could have also told me that, you know what, you've made some changes in that other area. I was not aware of that,
Yeah.
right? So it maybe indicates a communication problem here. And things like that. I mean, the problems are not somebody missed it. The problems are how, like, the thing that we need to really think about is how do we, you know, make changes as a team to find these problems earlier. And I think that's how we should focus on. We shouldn't talk about X person didn't check properly. That's just unfair.
Well, there's a slightly different perspective that I want to bring into this. Okay,
Mhm.
if a bug is missed in production,
Mhm.
instead of asking why did you miss that bug, the question should be how did that bug get integrated and deployed?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
because because you have such a robust CI/CD pipeline, so obviously that bug has got integrated, continuous integration of that bug, and then continuous deployment of that bug. That's what has led to that.
Yeah, correct.
Your fundamental problem is not a tester missing the bug. Your fundamental problem is you introducing that bug at the first place and it going through the CI/CD
Yeah.
pipeline, and then going into production. And obviously, like you said, things such as observability, things like continuous monitoring, which is essential to the CI/CD pipeline. People talk about so many things. Okay, people talk about continuous integration, continuous deployment all the time. How many people talk about continuous monitoring?
Mm.
Not many. Okay, people understand. People talk a lot about shift left, shift left, shift left. How many people actually talk about a combination of shift left and shift right?
Yeah.
Okay, you talk about it all the time. There's so much talk. Okay, people give example of Facebook.
Mm.
Brilliant example. Okay, they have the world's most amazing DevOps pipeline in place, fully automated. Okay, they reach the customer so fast. They have deployments every 6 seconds or something like that. Okay,
Mm.
which is cool, which is fantastic. It works for them. It works in their context. What are they giving people? They are giving content. So when people are getting the content that they need, their focus will not be on bugs,
Yeah.
right? So it is very easy that okay, in the next release or in the next to next deployment, you fix a bug and then you give it to them. So
Actually, since you're talking about Facebook, one thing comes to mind. So their API, one of the Facebook APIs which we were using for related to authentication, had an issue, which I spotted, and then I reported it to them. And they said, "Oh, because of the current architecture, we are not going to be able to fix this. It's a known thing." But that made me realize, like, if they're saying they can't fix something because of their architecture, sure, they have a great CI/CD pipeline, but then there is some mess somewhere, right?
yeah,
And those are not things that people will talk about. People just generally talk about the most fanciest things, but there are other things, and like we from different companies just look at their core things and they say, "Oh, we should do exactly like what they're doing because it's working for them," but it might not work for us, and people fail to realize that, I guess.
I will tell you this, Lavanya. I have been using Facebook for many years now. Okay, I went off Facebook for a while, but then suddenly um, my father, who's obviously retired, and you know he wanted he joined Facebook. Okay, and he joined Facebook. Obviously, he wanted to see all his loved ones also on Facebook. So I joined back. This is- but then in all this journey, I have never ever seen the Facebook notifications working fine. Never. Till date, not once have I seen Facebook notifications working properly. I have raised so many bugs, and every time I get the same response that you got. Okay, we'll have to change our architecture drastically. We can't make this. Okay, so it's working in whatever state it is right now. It's fine, and people don't complain because what they see is okay. The neighbor got a new dog. How cute that dog is. Okay, or I made a nice pie and I put pictures of that, and then that picture got 1,000 likes. Okay. Or I went to vacation to some secluded place in the Himalayas, and that got like uh, 500 comments. Okay, nice, beautiful, blah, blah. People are focused on that, and that is the core business of Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay, to let people focus on stupid things.
Yeah.
And as developers and testers, if we focus on those things as well, we are not getting what we should be. And in fact, the point that you mentioned that just because it works with Facebook, it will not work for me is something very important to understand. And that was the exact topic that I spoke about at recently at one of the conferences, uh, the global testing retreat in December. I spoke about, and my topic was the FANG test strategy. FANG is Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Does it work for me? If I am in the space industry, it doesn't work for me. If I'm
Correct.
healthcare industry, it doesn't work for me.
Yes.
If I am in the fintech industry, it doesn't work for me. If I am in, geographical information systems industry, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So the context there is totally different. The context here is totally different, and people
Yeah.
need to understand that.
Yeah. Correct.
You are absolutely right in saying that. No, now that brings me to another important aspect. So we've spoken about tools, we've spoken about 100% automation, and we've spoken about collaboration. What about situations where a tester is asked to collaborate with a developer and help with unit testing? A lot of people still feel that unit testing is purely a developer's job.
Mm.
What is your perspective?
I have done that in the past, so I feel like it's pretty good. I mean, at least from my perspective, I found it very useful. It might be different for different people, I understand. But there's no harm in a tester looking at unit tests or pairing with a developer for
First
unit
of
tests.
all, is it possible?
Oh, sure, sure. I mean, if I've done it, yeah, like I think everybody can do it. Right? I'm not a magician. So
We
I
are
think it's
talking about magic. We are constantly been talking about magic.
I did that on purpose. Yeah. So it's okay. So like even in my work journey, right? I was not somebody who understood unit testing at the start. I worked with the developers to understand what tests they have already written, so that when I thought about UI level automated tests, I wouldn't duplicate things. That's why like was the first reason I even started looking at what was already done. And in the process, I mean, at least that team that which I worked with was really very helpful, right? We would have so if they finished developing when they thought they were done with like development, we would have something called as DevBox testing, where we would just walk over to their desk and they would show on their machines that see this is how things look. And there were a couple of people who actually even used to show code that this is how we have modeled it, this is how it is, these are the tests that we have. Do you think that we should add anything else? And I felt like those conversations were great because as a tester I could think about many more things that they should have been or could have been covered at that level. So I would say, hey, you know what, why don't you add a check for this, why don't you add a check for that? And then they would add it and see, oh, it failed, okay, you come back later, let me fix it first, you know. So we have had those conversations, and I've seen a lot of value in testers looking at what is already automated at UI level, because they can also give inputs about what more can be done. And also, again, I want to emphasize it. The best part about this is since we know what are the different things that are covered, we don't need to write those at the UI level checks, right? We can avoid duplication, and I feel like the if we start minimizing the number of tests at the UI level, the maintenance is going to be easier, and that's a benefit for the entire team, not just as testers, right? So I feel like there is a lot of value in this, and it's all about collaboration, right? Maybe at the start, some developer might be irritated that you want to look at their code, but don't let's not portray it as I'm checking what you're doing. Let's not portray it like that. Let's portray it as I want to see, I want to learn, and I want to help you move faster to the maybe next feature, and we can do this together, right? So
or
when
or I have some ideas which I would like to share with you,
mm,
which you can give me your perspective on and see if you can use it in your code.
yeah, 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 that's a very good point. So then I like discussions or whatever statements like these make it collaborative, right? It doesn't sound like, oh, I'm going to tell you how to code, because nobody likes that, right? And if somebody tells me I'm going to teach you how to test, like if a developer tells me, I'm going to be what really? But uh, when we have when we state it such that where we're actually helping each other do things better for the product, I think it becomes a very collaborative approach, and then it just eventually becomes easier to do. So I'm definitely for collaboration. If people can look at unit as great, if they don't want to, it's a different thing. But at least discussions can still happen. So discussions, I feel, are important.
Well, I think those were some very insightful responses, and I want to see, how our testing community thinks about all these things that you brought about. So when I'm going to post this, probably after your episode, I'm going to ask people to watch your episode and then run a poll and see how many of you actually as testers think like what has been discussed here, because it is very important. And I feel that one way to realize the true potential of automation is by thinking on these terms. It is not so much about the tools, it is not so much about the coding language, it is not so much about coverage. For heaven's sake, I don't know what that term means. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm being very honest. I do not understand what coverage actually means till today. Okay. People first used to say, okay, we want to see what percentage of requirements are covered. Fair enough. Then people went on to say, we want to see how much percentage of the actual code of the product is covered. Okay. Now, when they talk about automation, they just talk about, earlier it was, at least the terminology that was used was test coverage. Now it's not even test coverage, it's just coverage. So what does coverage mean? What are you trying to find out? Okay. And what significance is that number? Some people also went on to say coverage for us means what percentage of manual test cases have been converted into automation test cases. I'm like, really?
I
I-
think we in the industry are obsessed with numbers, right? Coverage numbers, number of bugs. How do you measure number of bugs? We want to know who's doing better. What? Because there's no standard, right? Like I might find one bug which is very critical. Somebody else might find 50, which are maybe just small UI font or some placement related
But
things.
the person who found 50 bugs will get a better appraisal
Yeah.
because they just found 50 and you just found one. What are you even thinking? Why should I promote somebody who has got one bug and not promote somebody who's got 50? Guys, this is being sarcastic. No, it's not that. I mean, the number
And it's sad that you have to say it as sarcastic. That's probably the state of things right now.
otherwise people will think, oh, Bridget said this, and the next thing is, people are making memes out of this also. So, anyways, the point is, guys, understand the value that you're trying to bring in with anything that you do. Always ask the question, what is the value of what I'm doing? Okay, how is it going to benefit the larger community? Okay, whether it is testers, whether it is at project level, whether it is the customer, what benefit does it bring? Any step that you take, anything that you think of, okay, you want to adopt a CI/CD pipeline, please by all means go ahead and do it. But what value does that CI/CD pipeline bring in to you, to your project, to your organization, to your customer? Think about it first, okay, before making that big investment that you're doing. Okay, it's not that I am against all of this. Please don't uh, perceive it that way. I'm very much in favor of automation and making life easy. I'm a lazy guy. Okay, I love easy life. I want things around me automated. I want to be able to, take the remote and instead of walking up to the TV and every time switching it on, changing the channel. I love my remote. That's automation,
Yeah.
right? So,
Actually, talking about lazy, I think one more thing comes to mind. So I'm currently in Singapore, right? And sometimes I want to transfer money back home. So now there are multiple different players which I can choose from. So there's maybe SingX, Instagram, TransferWise, whatever. And I want to get the best rates, right? So what that means is I go to these 4 or 5 different sites. I put SGD to INR and see which one is giving me better rates. And for me, this was like frustrating. Yeah, I have to go to 4 sites, I have to see, and then I forget how much it was. So I go back there and check. So what I did was I just looked at their network calls. So what API is actually returning these, it was all JSON objects actually. So what is returning these? And I wrote a very small script which would call these things. It doesn't even do it in parallel because they're just 4 sites, so I don't really care. So it calls these sequentially and just prints on the console. No fancy UI, just prints on the console. This is the rate of this thing, and which is giving me the best one currently. And
can you do a demo of this now?
it's not on this laptop. Sorry, it's on the other one. I can maybe I have not put it up on GitHub, but I can show you later. I guess.
Yeah, maybe it's a good idea for you to just record a quick demo and share.
Can do, can
At least
do.
that community.
Yeah,
Okay, you share it and then we put it on the YouTube channel and showcase it as something cool. Okay, so
yeah,
yeah,
sure.
we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. I have something in mind, but we'll talk about this idea. This is really cool. See, so guys, this is automation. This is automation. I mean, make life easy for yourself. Okay,
It's good
don't.
to be lazy sometimes.
Yeah. Uh, well, Lavanya, that this brings me to the next segment of this interview, and which is rapid fire. So I asked you a few questions.
Okay,
The only thing is that you've got 5 seconds to think of an answer. You can't
okay.
go.
Okay, I will try.
And if it is a multiple choice question, you will have to tell me the reason why. But
Okay,
okay.
okay. Also, if the questions are applicable to you, then after I give the answer, you should also give answer. Is that okay?
A new twist in the game. So that's where you see Lavanya coming into into the zone. All right. Okay. So, vada pav or a masala dosa.
Vada pav. Uh, I I grew up in Mumbai. I'm a South Indian, yes, but I grew up in Mumbai and street food, Mumbai street food is all I like.
You grew up in Mumbai. That's the answer.
Yeah.
If you are in Mumbai, you cannot escape from vada pav. Vada pav, guys, for those who don't know, is an Indian version of a burger. Okay. And it is one heck of a spicy burger that you can have. And just one vada pav, people can survive the entire day with that.
Yeah.
People do that in Mumbai. A lot of people do that in Mumbai, and it's incredible. Okay, and so
What's your answer to this question?
I was so when from Bangalore I moved to Mumbai. I had heard stories about vada pav, never experienced one before. And the evening when I moved in, you know, with my colleagues, we were so they all decided that they'll go and have vada pav, and we went to this place and this streets on the street it was there and ordered vada pav, and he just decorated the whole thing with the red chutney and the powder chutney and with the green chili. And I looked at that and I said, "What is this?" And my friend said, "No, you have to take a bite of the vada pav and then take a bite of the chili and then you see what." And oh my god, that first bite I still remember. I'm still looking for that taste. Okay, I'm still looking for that taste. I haven't found it yet. That is, in my memory. It was so awesome. It was so awesome. So yeah, vada pav common. Yeah. Okay, my next question to you is life in India versus life in Singapore.
Uh, oh my God, I'm going to take more than 5 seconds. No, I think, yeah, okay, I want to say India because it's home and because like a lot of my relatives are there, family is there. So I would say India, I guess. But honestly, Singapore has started feeling like home anyway. So it's all right. I feel like like when I move to a different place, I kind of eventually adapt to it. It starts feeling like home. So I'm not going to complain. But yeah, if I really have to choose, it'd probably be India.
Okay, this is not a so the next question that I'm going to ask you is not a rapid fire question because it's
Okay.
a question of my interest. Okay,
Okay.
I'm a foodie. Okay, so when I go to a new place, I look for the food options. So if I
Hmm.
were to move to Singapore, what will be my food options? Will I get the same variety as India or more or less or
If you eat non-veg food, you will get a lot more. Uh, because I think Singapore has been like a hub, right, to all different places. Like we have people from the West, we have all Southeast Asian cuisines here, we have Indian cuisine, we have just everything. So especially if you're a non-vegetarian, this will be heaven. I am a vegetarian, so Yeah, my options are still a little limited, but it's still great. You have all different varieties here.
With a lot of sambal and stuff, right? Making it a
Oh
little.
yeah, salmon also. But not all food is like that. You get just a whole variety. You get great Korean food, you get great Italian food, you get great Indian food. Yes, it's all there.
I live in the Netherlands right now, and one of the colonies of the Netherlands was Indonesia. Now, Indonesia obviously, just like India, was also a spice heaven, and their food is very spicy. I mean, I've tasted Indonesian cuisine.
Yeah,
So, and there is a lot of use of sambal in what
yeah,
they just spice it up. They just add
yeah.
to that their level of spice, and they just make it. And I can see the smile on your face at the
No,
moment.
actually, no, actually, so many people feel that Indians can take in that spice. I cannot take the sambar spice. It's just too much for even me.
Yeah, there is. That's what I was going to say. So there is an assumption that as Indians, okay, we eat the most spiciest food, and then I have to explain to people here that when we talk about a spice or a masala, it's not just about raising the level of heat.
Yeah, yeah.
Is used for giving the food some color, some texture, and some flavor also. It's not just heat. So you
Yes, yes.
have to tick all the boxes by adding the right amount of that masala.
Correct.
Otherwise you just mess it up
Yeah.
completely. So there is a totally different perception when it comes to spices, that are, oh, these spices will make it hot. It is not necessarily going to make it hot. I mean, good that we are discussing food, and like somebody was saying recently in one of the episodes, we will soon have a tester speak food special where we do about testing, we talk about food. And that reminds me of a wonderful session. Maybe we'll look for the link if that is available for everybody. Rahul Verma did a talk at Agile Testing Days last,
Mhm.
and he compared testing with tasting. Okay, and that was such a brilliant analogy. I just love it when he thinks of these creative ways of putting across what you're doing, and he's such a wonderful speaker. So that's reminded me of that. Maybe if I can find the recording of that, I will share the link in the description here. It's awesome. Okay, so food reminds me of so many things. Anyway, okay, one last question for you in the rapid fire. Weather wise, Mumbai or Singapore?
It's very similar.
That's the reason why I asked you. That's the reason why I asked you, because Mumbai also does not have a winter, and I
Yeah.
also does not have a winter. And so, anyways, thank you, Lavanya, for those quick responses. I do not have a Karan Johar gift hamper, sorry. But anyways, it has been a fun conversation with you, a lot of learning, a lot of good discussion. And before I let you go, last question for you. What does Lavanya like to do when she's not testing?
I like reading. Um Actually, okay, so it used to be a lot of fiction, but now I'm forcing myself to read non-fiction more. I think recently, I can talk about a few testing related books that I read recently, which I really, really love. Buddha and testing. I guess
Uh,
everybody speaks about it, right? It's amazing. Uh, then, very recently, I read 50 plus mistakes of my software testing career by Ajay.
yeah.
Yeah, very quick read as well, right? That it doesn't take that much time, and some of the stories were so relatable. Honestly, like at points, I was thinking, "Oh my god, if I had read this book earlier, I might have behaved differently. I made the exact same mistake." So that was a great read as well. I read Perfect Software and Other Illusions of Software Testing, Jerry Weinberg. That
Oh, love that book. Love.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to read it multiple times. Right? I actually wrote down with like pen and paper. I wrote down some points from the book because they were so good, like so eye-opening, right? At times that like that's a brilliant book. Let me see. I read Design of Everyday Things. It's not a testing book, right? But it's a book that talks about user behavior, psychology. And that itself is actually part of testing. So even though we might not classify it as a software testing book, I feel like that gave me a lot of perspective about general like testing in general. So that's another thing I read. Another thing I read last year actually was Clean Code. So folks who talk about like automation, right? A lot of them don't think about automation code as like any production code, right? They don't think about writing it well, writing it in a readable way, think about maintainability, all of that. And I feel like when we read coding related books as well, so it could be refactoring, it could be clean code, whatever. When we read those, we can apply those things in our automated test checks as well. So I feel like uh, if we are really doing automation, we should also read about these coding related books. So that's important. Actually, I'm currently reading this one, domain driven design. Um, this is again about it's a lot to do with code actually. So maybe not a lot of testers would want to pick up, but the thing that I really liked is it talks about modeling of our problems, and
Is an
there
important part of testing, by the way.
exactly.
Modeling of
So I can
problems
give an
is an
example.
important part of testing. Yes.
I can
So,
actually give an example. So we were working in a healthcare related project, which was basically a hospital management system, but dedicated for like very remote areas. So maybe they don't have great internet connection and things like that, right? And we were thinking about building a thing for like sending records, patient records across to different hospitals who came under the same chain of hospitals, right? And we were having this discussion with like a whiteboard drawing and saying how we can make this kind of API calls, we can do this, we can do that, and testers like me were involved in that discussion. And during the discussion, I found an issue. Like I found a bug in the way we were modeling. And I said, if this condition happens, and if we do this, then we might actually fetch a wrong record of a wrong patient. And that could lead to fatalities as well, right? Like healthcare is very critical. You can't really fetch a wrong record in this case. And then we realized, oh yeah, right. So this model doesn't really fit. So let's change it. Right. And the reason I really like that bug is because we found it at the earliest possible stage, right, where we were discussing the approach. It was not like after implementing when I typed a few keys, I was like actually doing something. No, it was nothing. Like I had not touched the keyboard at all. The developer had not touched the keyboard at all. Nothing was developed, but we found that issue like right at the start. And that's why I actually keep saying that, testers should get involved early on. And I guess that's why even like these domain driven design, whatever, this book which talks about modeling and things like that is good for even testers to read, because then they understand these concepts better and can give like important inputs where it really matters. It could save so much time for the project as
so Lavanya, I would obviously list all these books that you've been reading
well.
in the description
Uh,
of this particular thing. So you may just need to help me that
yeah,
after
sure, sure.
recording, please send me a list of all the books that you're
Mhm.
reading, and I will put them all in the description so that our audience can benefit from this. Uh, Excellent conversation with you. Your energy, your passion for testing and for making life better for testers showed through the entire conversation, and that's something so infectious. I mean, like I said, I've been watching your talks in various conferences, and I get so much inspired. This has been inspiring for me. Thank you so much for that. And obviously we will see more of you. We are going to be seeing you in the first ever panel discussion that the test chat is going to bring in. And the idea was basically that we have to wait for conferences to have these panel discussions. We said,
Mm.
since we have a platform, the test chat is the platform, and we discuss things, on chat. Why not bring it in the form of a panel discussion and give it to people? So we are going to have more and more episodes, starting with the ones that you're going to be a part of. We are also you know going to launch a few other initiatives as far as WIT is concerned. So WIT will have a women's only panel discussion. So you will have a WIT version of what we call as Chatterbox. The name sounds a little funny because
I like it.
Chatterbox is basically used for people who like to talk a lot, like me. I'm a chatterbox. I'm a very proud chatterbox. It would take a lot of effort for people to actually shut me up, but that's okay. But that's okay. But we are going to have a chatterbox WIT version soon, where obviously you will obviously be invited to that as well, along with other great female speakers that we have. We have seen some wonderful speakers come up through the WIT episodes. A lot of girls have started speaking in public. Okay, we've seen the rise of people from being first-time speakers on WIT to giving conference talks. Classic example of that is our Akriti Shukla, who featured in the very first episode of WIT, and it was her very first talk ever. And then she spoke at Testflix, which is a great transition to have. So
Actually, I want to thank you for bringing that platform, especially for women. I mean, I feel like a lot of women are more shy to even ask for help at times. So when you have this platform, you can just motivate them to or push them to do it. Uh, and they're all so talented. So it's just wonderful to actually hear them.
absolutely. I mean, the talent is awesome. Okay, and I also want to talk about Divya Tripathi, the other speaker who featured in the very first episode of WIT along with Akriti Shukla. Now, she's now so full of confidence. In one of the episodes of WIT, I had spoken to two ladies, but then I said, okay, maybe I should do something different here. I need a third lady to speak on this subject. And so I just called up Divya and said, Divya, this is the topic. You have 2 days time. Can you send me a video? And guess what? She was so excited to do it. And I was like, wow, this is what I want to see people do it. So that is the amazing thing that is happening. And I feel really happy to see people come up and be willing to learn and be willing to share their thoughts. This is exactly what we want to see. So there's these small little things. These may be very small for a lot of people, not much of a big deal. But for me, this is a big win that somebody who was a first time speaker a few months ago is now very confident, wants to speak more, wants to participate more, be more active. This is awesome. So I am loving the whole experience. Okay, I am glad that the women who are participating are doing such a great job. And of course, needless to say, I mean, Himani, she's been doing an incredible job, coordinating the whole effort. That is a very tough job that she is actually doing. And it is awesome to see her do that so effectively. So I can't thank her enough. uh, she's awesome. Okay, and I am pretty sure that we are going to do some more cool things with regards to WIT. There is something which is cooking now with Women's Day around the corner, so there may be some announcements coming up soon for that. So thank you for being an active participant with WIT, with supporting us on that initiative,
Thanks
and
for giving me an opportunity. I would say that.
and for volunteering to do more. So thank you for all that you have been doing for the testing community. And we will keep talking. I want you to enjoy your weekend thoroughly. Although almost half of it is gone for you because you are in Singapore, so many hours ahead of us. But our day has just started. I might just go and crash for a couple of hours and then wake up like that. But then it was awesome talking to you. We'll keep talking. You, bye bye.
Thank you.